it is felt very strongly that we must move on, having achieved all the important institution of.
There are already differing views, however, about this second transition, with some in the party arguing that it needs a lot of clarity.
From what or from where to where? What constituted the first transition? What were the tasks of that phase? Have all of those tasks been accomplished or not?
The decisions of this 4-day conference will serve as recommendations to the National Congress in Mangaung in December. The real test, however, will be in their implementation. Tammy Dixon, SABC News.
That insert prepared for us by Tammy Dixon, who we're crossing over to right now. He's standing right in front of the doors where the delegates will be coming through as they take their seats at the opening session of this policy conference. Tammy, what is happening there right now?
SABC.
Insert prepared for us by Tammy Dixon, who we're crossing over to right now. He's standing right in front as they take their seats at the opening session of this policy.
Stand by, come back to you.
I can't hear Tammy.
Coming back to you. Can talk to your guest.
Tammy Dixon there giving us a sense of what is going on, and as you can see from the visuals, the delegates are slowly trickling in, so it looks like we are indeed, the program is indeed running a little bit late. But of course I'm not alone here in our makeshift studio here at Galaga Estate. I am with Professor Susan Boyson. I'm also with Dr. Sakela Buhlungu. Welcome to both of you, and thank you very much for joining us. Well, the day has indeed arrived. Expectations?
Yes, you know, it's so difficult to picture expectations because this is a different ANC. It's a continuously changing ANC. It's an ANC that now for the second policy conference in a row has promised to be connecting with the people more closely and is pushing forward a more incisive, perhaps more radical, some call it, agenda, but simultaneously.
This is just a dress rehearsal for Mangaung. And many people, therefore, look at this conference with a view to looking at what's going to happen at Mangaung. That's the sad thing, because a lot of the issues will therefore be overshadowed by the political posturing and positioning and position taking. And that's a sad thing about it, because there's a lot on the table, there's a lot on the menu, and it needs to be dealt with.
Well, the leadership of the ANC has been at pains, insisting that they have done everything possible and will continue to do so to ensure that this conference does not degenerate into exactly what you're fearing.
It's inevitable. We've seen already, we've seen in the build-up towards this conference, people taking those positions, the posturing, and so on and so forth. Some of it is very coded stuff, but we can see, we know. It's either you are for the second transition, I mean, that's one. The second transition document, sadly, the substance and the content thereof is being missed, and it becomes a metaphor for the positions that people take. Are you for the second transition, or are you critical anti-second transition? And that's the sad thing about it, because, I mean, as my colleague here is saying, expectations out there are extremely high. Basic issues of delivery of services, issues of fixing issues about education and health and so on and so forth. I mean, the shadow of those things, the shadow of corruption looms large here. The shadow of, I mean, look at the textbook scandal up in Limpopo. It looms very large. So are we going to discuss those things? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, it is going to be, I mean, when we come back, when we're going to talk to Tammy very briefly, I want us to begin by discussing this second transition document and whether, in fact, it is a proxy for Mangaung and everything else that's going to follow beyond this point. For now, though, let's cross over to Tammy Dixon, who's going to give us a sense of what is going on inside the plenary hall. Tammy?
Thank you very much, Vuyo. Indeed, we are right here at the entrance to the plenary wall. This is where the National Policy Conference of the ANC will be taking place. As you can see behind me, the delegates are trickling in to begin to take their seats. They were supposed to have started at 9 o'clock according to official program, but as you can see, they are still moving in, taking their seats. Lots of delegates, over 3,000 delegates are expected to fill in this plenary, and it's going to be opened by President of the African National Congress and the head of state of the Republic, Mr. Jacob Zuma. A little later on, we're not sure now what time is the conference going to start, given that they are still coming in, but we'll continue to update you about the program. But we have seen a number of senior officials of the ANC arriving. We have seen Jeff Khatebe, the head of the ANC Policy, Tony Yengen is here, Lindy Wesisulu, and many others, Blade Zimand and so on, and many other leaders of the Tripartite Alliance. They have already arrived, signaling that the conference will begin any moment from now. At this point, let's go to a commercial break and then we'll continue thereafter.
Talk SA tackles issues that are close to Mzansi's heart, from service delivery to poverty, HIV/AIDS, and getting to know our own identity.
That's the problem with this bill, is that we don't know.
We do have a lot of professionals here in South Africa.
Eventually, Africa unites.
We journey across South Africa to celebrate activities that bring us together, speak to the youth about things that make them proud to be South African, while we cry, laugh, and then about ourselves.
Swag we have.
Proud to be an African.
It's a good life. I love it in South Africa. It's just different.
Talk SA.
That's Talk SA, building the nation. Tuesdays at 11:20 a.m. only on SABC2.
Hariboeng, let's keep talking SA.
Tonight on Seven Dilan.
Paula, sal jy my vrou wees?
This Seven Dilan tonight 6:30.
The streets of Mangaung, the scene of a bloody murder. A case that a decorated cop doesn't want solved.
Evidence.
A loyal team player who must protect a fellow officer.
No.
They're both serving under a new station commander who is a mother of two troubled teenagers. Streets of Mangaung, Tuesdays 9:30 p.m. only on SABC2. Train to Win, Fridays 11:20 a.m. on SABC2.
Soon to become a highway of champions with the rekindling of the Olympic flame. And here they are, Carl Lewis gets off very well.
Say hello to London, city of history, celebrity and style. And in 2012, city of the games of the 30th Olympiad, the greatest games of all. Welcome to Countdown to London, every week towards the 2012 Games SABC2 will bring you an Olympic perspective like never before, from inside London and around the world. We'll take you inside the Olympic campaign of athletes in every sport on every continent. The champions like Ball, Felt and Flassage, and all the hopefuls whose fame is yet to come. Our team is on the streets of London full-time, reporting on test events, venues, progress, city spirit, and all the controversies too. Train to Win, Fridays 11:20 a.m. on SABC2.
Soon to become a highway of champions with the rekindling of the Olympic flame. And here they are, Carl Lewis.
Say hello to London, city of history, celebrity and style. And in 2012, city of the games of the 30th Olympiad, the greatest games of all. Welcome to Countdown to London. Every week towards the 2012 Games, SABC2 will bring you an Olympic perspective like never before.
Of the governing party, the ANC, is being held, this being the opening ceremony of a 4-day conference. More than 3,500 delegates, of course, being gathered here, and we're going to discuss, thresh out the various policies. 13 documents altogether have been tabled. The ANC, of course, seeking feedback from its members, saying, let's discuss, let's talk about these things that we should be doing for this country. As you are seeing there on your screen, the Treasurer General of the ANC, Dr. Matthews Posa, the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, Tandi Modise, the Secretary General of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe, having a little discussion there with the Treasurer General, so looking all happy. Dr. Zweli Mkhize, Provincial Chairperson of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, having a chat with the ANC's Head of Policy, Jeff Khadebe. Delegates, of course, are starting to arrive. The hall is not full yet. People have only started arriving. The proceedings should have started at 9 o'clock, but there's a delay, as you can see. But the formal proceedings, that is, should be starting pretty soon. The Minister of Public Service and Administration recently deployed to that portfolio. Ms. Lindiwe Sisulu, the Premier of Gauteng, Nomvula Mokonyane. Lots and lots of people who are occupying various positions, both inside and outside of government, are here. There's a whole group called deployees who are also here. This ranges from Directors General to heads of parastatals and other institutions that support this democracy. You're watching a live broadcast coming to you from Gallagher Estate in Midrand, Johannesburg. The policy conference of the ANC, the governing party. Well, a lot of people, of course, speculating that this, in fact, will be nothing but a proxy for what's coming up in Mangaung in a few months' time, that being the elective conference of the ANC, where the ANC will be electing its top leadership, the people who will take this movement beyond December. Here with me in the studio is Professor Susan Boyson, as well as Dr. Sakela Buthungu. For now, though, let's take a look at this insert.
Pre-1994, under the Natives Land Act of 1913, black people were restricted from legal ownership of land. Over 80% of land was owned by white people, who made up less than 20% of the population. Obviously nursing the political sensitivities of the country's infant democracy, the ANC took a gradual but painful approach to land reform. The original plan in 1994 was to see 30% of land transferred to the hands of black South Africans by 1999. It's a process that was to be driven by government's policy of willing buyer, willing seller. But 13 years later, only a shocking 8% of land has been redistributed. Government says while this policy is good in the property market, it is being abused in the redistribution program.
The state is not a willing buyer, it's a compelled buyer. So in other words, it's a sitting duck for exploitation. I mean, anybody wants to make money. There are many speculators out there. It's the state. If the state is involved in buying without any controls and so on, you're going to rip off the state.
Ngwinti complained that land prices are often inflated and a sizable chunk of land is owned by foreigners.
You'll still have freehold, and you'll also be, if we succeed in persuading the nation on this, you'll have freehold. You'll also, as part of that freehold, you'll also be subjected to the limited extent. And thirdly, you will then, of course, in addition to that, you will have certain special obligations and conditions as a foreigner owning land in the country.
There's now a realization that if land redistribution depends on commercial prices, reaching the 30% target may take half a century.
May mean, with all the same, 54 years to deliver. This will be beyond many of our lifetimes.
It's an issue that remains high on the country's political agenda. Fearing unintended consequences, some are suggesting the state to use courts to enforce legal expropriation in order to speed up land redistribution.
When they get to a point where they say we cannot come to a mutual valuation, then you use the Expropriation Act. You don't just pay more and more and more, and I've written to the Minister on numerous occasions about property prices that have escalated 140% in the last 7 years. Now, no government can sustain that if they want to buy land. So we're not using existing legislation.
Let's stop flogging this willing seller, willing buyer horse and deal with an instrument that will enable us to distribute land, including the instruments that the Honourable Trollip is proposing.
Land Affairs plans to table new legislation on land reform next year. Public Works also plans to table the expropriation bill by the end of 2013. These were for purposes of making it easier to seize land from white farmers who refuse to sell their properties for redistribution to black people. Critics, however, say government is to blame for the slow pace of land reform in the country. Some farming and civil rights organizations say government's land redistribution policies are plagued by inefficiencies and are a waste of money. At a conference held earlier this year, government's land reform policies were heavily criticized. Critics believe the proposed legislation on land reform will threaten food security in the long run.
A government will own the land. And we know globally, worldwide, governments are not very successful in running businesses. It should rather be in the hands of citizens with full ownership.
If we go for the Green Paper, we will find that more and more people are confined to trying to scratch a living from the land on leasehold title, in other words, with leasehold title on land that they don't own themselves, but which they occupy really by the grace and favour of the state. The government is also trying to encourage people to move into new agri-villages where the situation will remain very much the same. They will not have individual title. They will be the tenants of the state.
The organizations want government to prioritize a just and equitable land policy.
So you need, at the end of the day, a commercial farmer that is productive, profitable to produce food, and the Green Paper have a negative effect on that.
The ruling party's policy document for discussion states that the willing buyer, willing seller model tends to distort the land market. This by inflation of prices of the land earmarked for restitution. It also delays the process of increasing access of the poor to land. Discussions around this issue are expected to be quite robust. Yolisa Njamela, SABC News.
That said there on, of course, the critical issue of the land question. Insight prepared for us by Yolisa Njamela. If you've just joined us, you're watching a live broadcast. We are live to you from the Galaga Estate in Midrand. This is where the ANC is holding its 4-day policy conference. The much talked about conference, the day of course has indeed arrived. With me here in the studio is Professor Susan Boyson, as well as Dr. Sakela, with whom we'll be bringing you analysis of the various documents and policy positions being contemplated here. The proceedings, the formal proceedings, that is, where President Jacob Zuma will be formally opening this conference, have just gotten underway, but they haven't as yet gone to the part where the Secretary General of the ANC is going, together with the rest of the officials, will be coming together and then saying, well, the chairperson has to start opening the proceedings. The president of the ANC, President Jacob Zuma, then makes the opening remarks, and we will then give a political report. And then so will the Secretary General of the ANC after him. 13 documents altogether have been tabled. Together and then saying, well, the chairperson has to start opening the proceedings. The president of the ANC, President Jacob Zuma, then makes the opening remarks, and we will then give a political report, and then so will the Secretary General of the ANC after him. 13 documents altogether have been tabled.
Document which has been adopted by the National Executive Committee unanimously. But the document, once it's put out, you are actually saying, let's engage. This is our view, but let's engage. So any view can come out of this. There's no train smash. We want the views of branches as we move to the national conference.
Okay. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Tony.
All right, that's thanks very much, sir. That's Ace Magashule, the chairperson of the ANC in the Free State province, giving their views in terms of their expectations and where exactly as a province they're going to focus on in terms of all these documents that are going to be discussed here at the policy conference of the ANC in Kalada Estate in Midrand. Let's go back to Vuyo now in the studio.
Thanks there to Tammy Dixon speaking, as you heard, to the newly elected Free State Provincial Chairperson of the ANC, Mr. Ace Magashule. You're watching a live broadcast coming to you from Galaga Estates in Midrand, Johannesburg. This is where the ANC, over the next 4 days, 3,500 delegates will be looking into all the documents, 13 of them, that the ANC has put out for discussion. These, of course, affecting virtually every aspect of our lives here in South Africa. The ANC looking at whether it needs to improve here, discard this or that, bring in new laws here and there to resolve some of the challenges facing this country today. And one of those challenges is, of course, as you heard earlier in the insert that was prepared for us by Yoli Sanjamela, being the critical land question. The minister there talking about freehold, also talking about ownership of property by foreigners. It looks like if there's one thing that the ANC seems to be united on, it would seem that it is on the issue of the land question. Now, remember at the weekend, Jesse Duarte on our program Sunday Live, when we're saying, is it about new policies really, or is it about the implementation of the policies that you already have? And she was, of all the things that she probably agrees with everybody, that perhaps it's about emphasis, it's about implementing the news, but certainly on the land issue, they think that new policies are needed to address that. Do you agree?
Yeah. Just about all the provinces, I actually think all of them, come in with their tentative proposals into this policy conference saying willing buyer, willing seller does not work. So that is going to be a big consensus. On industries, mining industry, for example, everybody says the state must have a bigger role. So the bigger role for the state and willing buyer, willing seller does not work. Those are consensus points that I think we already see emerging. It's interesting, though, these are not new. These were all amongst the Polokwane 2007 resolutions. And that is again evidence that the policy wheel in the ANC turns very slowly and too slowly. They could have been implementing it at this stage rather than bringing it to this policy conference.
Yes, in fact,
once
because
again.
a lot of people are saying, well, actually the ANC has everything it needs to deal with the land question. It doesn't necessarily need new laws.
I think on the land issue, I agree with my colleague. The issue really is this, that while there's a general kind of consensus that the current policies are not working, I don't think it's too clear to everyone what the alternative should be. And that's the rub here. And that's the rub. And
everyone seems to be going for the issue of, well, whenever the state wants to buy or land, and then the price shoots up.
Yes.
But
what do you do then? What do you do then? And I think, this is going to be the key task of this conference, because the land issue is sensitive on many levels. It's as we saw in the inset, the one area of sensitivity is actually the fact that it's tied to issues of food security. Once you set the wrong foot forward, then the thing tips over and you get it wrong and the country goes down. The second area where it's sensitive is that, in fact, the entire transformation project hinges on whether you get the land question right.
Right, okay. We will continue with this conversation. Land issue, of course, there are several other issues that we'll be talking about. For now, though, we look a bit on the logistical side of this conference. Bit on the organization side, you would have had reports this morning of journalists who were turned away and other people who didn't get accreditation. Tammy Dixon earlier spoke to the national spokesperson of the ANC, Jackson Mthembu, about those logistical challenges, and here's how the interview went. You're seeing pictures there from delegates. It looks like the room is indeed filling up. Delegates are indeed arriving, a lot of them in a very good mood. singing. But let's go to that inset now, prepared where Tammy Dixon was talking, as I said earlier, to Jackson Mthembu about some of the logistical challenges that we were confronted with when we arrived here early this morning. It does. Okay, it does look like we have a bit of a technical challenge with that inset, but of course we are resolving that. Professor Boysons, I mean, when you arrived earlier, there was a bit of a situation where you were.
Yes, just security is an immense issue this time around. I was here same place 5 years ago at the previous policy conference.
Yes, I mean, we've been here so many times.
Probably 10 times more, let's say between 5 and 10 times more this time. And one of the senior security people around, but yesterday I asked him what's going on. And interesting, that tells us a bit about the ANC at the moment really being counter Julius Malema movement. He said it is because, the verbatim quote, he who is not with us anymore, and many of his supporters are. So the whole suggestion, this was a pretty senior person, suggesting that the additional security is not because they fear anything else but disruption, and that's where we see so much emphasis on discipline. President Zuma has been emphasizing transformation and steering the country further as much as he has been emphasizing discipline. We'll act against ill discipline, and the implication is, we know that it also goes beyond just the youth league, goes against dissidents in the ANC. For example, we saw that term being used in a Free State, and that tells us a lot about the ANC and what it has become, the different kind of ANC that we have now, even from 5 years ago.
Well, I mean, I've heard Dr. Uhlung, I mean, certain people saying, oh well, there's just way too much emphasis on the issue of discipline, that perhaps there should be as much, if not more, emphasis on things like, corruption, for example, how to actually effectively criminalize those things, and make sure that people who are found guilty or even suspected of such drastic actions are taken in the same way that action gets taken for members who are wayward or ill-disciplined.
Right. Look, I think the issue, the emphasis on discipline is interesting, and it speaks to a whole lot of other things.
And it's not a bad one.
It's not a bad,
but it's just that there may be unintended consequences when you start emphasizing this, perhaps more than the other.
Also do with a serious dose of openness, especially at this point in time, because sometimes discipline can be used as a device to shut down openness, to shut down debate, to clamp down on so-called dissidents. And that's the problem, and that's exactly the issue here, that you actually mobilize the notion, the concept of discipline to actually deal with your opponents. But those who are close to you, you turn a blind eye. And I think this is the issue. I think what's needed in the party at this stage is more about openness. How did we get here? I mean, 100 years on, okay, good, very nice, everybody's celebrating. But one question that's lacking in these documents, all of them, yes, there's identification here and there of the problem, but as to how did we get here, that's missing for me. That's missing in the documents, that's missing in the party, that's missing the public discourse.
Why is that though, Professor Boyson?
Hey, that's $1 million question. I think the ANC is too focused very often on continuously projecting what they're doing in government as the smart extension of the struggle. Of course, in some ways it is. All protocols observed in terms of apartheid and colonialism and how it has disfigured the society. But many people on the ground are increasingly saying, assume responsibility. Where are our representatives? What are you doing in government? And part of why we've come here is also evident in these documents. There's totally insufficient attention to what has been going wrong in government. If one looks at legislature and governance document, the word corruption doesn't feature there. Occasional reference to mismanagement or something like that. But they do not call a spade when it comes to that implementation period.
But also, I mean, isn't it also about the fact that the ANC is just not strong enough? I mean, take an issue like education in Limpopo. I mean, how an organization that prides itself for being everywhere, in every corner, in every district, in every village, how it just cannot, you don't see the ANC standing up for such things. It has to be a COPE and a DA that sort of, it's priorities. If it was there and actually seeing that, why would they turn a blind eye? Why would they not be the first to actually stand up and say, comrades, you're actually doing our children a disservice?
I think the problem is partly that the organizations wants to be both of two things. It wants service. I think the problem is partly that the organizations wants to be both of two things. It wants
come back in a second. For now, though, we're going to go to Tommy Dixon, who is standing by with the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, of course, who also happens to be a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, Dr. Blade Nzimande.
Indeed, we do have the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Dr. Blade Nzimande, who's going to share with us their views as the Communist Party with regards to the policy conference of the ANC. Now, this policy conference, how does the SACP view it, given that you are in an alliance with the ruling party in South Africa?
It's a very important event, the ANC Policy Conferences, because they're about which direction do we want to take our country, and also what is it that we expect of government to do. But this one in particular, we think for us as the SACP is even more important, because it's not that the ANC and the Alliance do not have policies, but it's about refining these policies and being even more practical and specific about what we want to do. And that is why as the SACP we are very happy that we've actually been invited to fully participate in all the 13 commissions, and I must say to you, Tam, we are interested in each and every issue as communists that is being discussed here today. Obviously there will be issues that would be somehow of more importance to us. The first one is the economic issues. Generally on those, we welcome the thrust of the ANC policy discussion document on the increased role of the state. As communists, we have always said it, the market on its own will not be able to respond to the challenge of poverty that is facing our people. But secondly, also, apart from the role of the state generally in the economy, what we are happy about is that something we've been campaigning on for more than a decade now is the trillions of rands that are in the hands of the financial sector, your pension and provident funds. To say that those monies need to be invested in such a way that they create jobs, if they invest in infrastructure, but in a manner that doesn't compromise the returns to those who have invested those monies, especially those who will require pension and provident. For us, that is very, very important. Similarly, this debate about the second transition, we're very happy about this debate as the SACP, because for us, we are less worried about the concept. We're more concerned about the content. That the debate is about how do we ensure more radical socio-economic transformation in this country. We have been saying this as the SACP, for instance, together with COSATU, that the first decade of our freedom economically, it was actually the capitalist class, the rich, who benefited more than the workers and the poor. And that the second decade of our freedom must benefit more
ordinary people in socio-economic terms.
But was that by design or by default? Because, I mean, the ANC has been in power since then.
I think that, well, partly it was, partly it wasn't. It wasn't because we did indeed inherit a highly distorted, problematic economy. But partly also it was by design because, as we said, as the SACP, following neoliberal policies like GEAR, did not help this country to be able to address this problem. And that was by design, which was more emphasizing the market and saying the state has no role to play or very minimal role. We are very pleased that as we come here, we are coming here also on the back of very important advances that we must consolidate on. Your national health insurance, there is more bursaries, for instance, for poor students in higher education. Government has committed to abandon the willing seller, willing buyer thing. We are coming here for us as the SACP, how do we build on those advances so that we radically change the conditions of ordinary people for the better.
Dr. Nzimande, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Siyabonga, Dixon.
All right, man. All right. That's the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party and an NEC member of the ANC as well, explaining their interest in this National Policy Conference. Let's go back to Vuyo now.
Some communist views, if you like. Well, you're seeing there, of course, the delegates, ANC stalwart Winnie Madikizela Mandela, as well as NEC member Tokyo Sekwale. Behind them, former Minister of Communications and Parliamentary Councillor for the President, Sipiwe Nyanda. All of them, of course, part of the NEC that's sitting up there with, of course, the membership trickling in. There you see the national chairperson who will be in charge of the session that's about to kick off, Baleka Mbete. Next to her, of course, being the Treasurer General of the ANC, Matthew Sposa. You're watching a live broadcast of the policy conference of the ANC taking place at the Galaga Estate in Midrand, Johannesburg, and that's what will be happening over the next 4 days until on Friday, when they have reached consensus on all the policy documents, 13 of them, that will be tabled here. Let's hear a bit of that music and the spirit, which is going to determine the spirit and mood of this conference. Interesting scenes and sounds there. Of course, you saw certain people doing the two-term things, but you also heard them saying they are going with President Jacob Zuma. Well, in case you're in doubt, that this will indeed be a proxy for all other things. There you have it. Professor Boyson?
Yes, indeed. We see here really delegates campaigning it's the commissions and the policy discussions are going to be there, but for these people who have been politicized in their branches, who have been mobilized on on factional grounds within the ANC as party, they are here with politics and succession and candidates in their minds, and we see that coming out. It's going to come out in songs throughout, and yes,
and it wouldn't be. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time.
It's not the first time.
I mean, this has happened at virtually every conference.
Yeah. But I think now the pattern has been set, and we're seeing a repeat of 2007, or rather earlier, actually.
I mean, it was never supposed to talk about the things that it spoke about, including the restoration of the powers of the deputy president and everything that. But I mean, people use that as a proxy for what they were going to do later.
But it shows the fallacy of this thing that you're not going to talk about leadership issues until October, while other people are using all sorts of other occasions to actually campaign. And for as long as you kind of put a lid on it, it keeps bubbling over. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Every platform gets kind of used for that purpose.
I want us to move on to social transformation. And to prepare us for that discussion, here's an insert prepared by Tsulufelo Mutibedi.
Separate development was the key aspect of apartheid. This left the South African society with deep divisions which are still very evident. The ANC has identified 5 pillars of social transformation for South Africa. These are the transformation of the state, the economy, organizational work, ideological struggle, and international work. The broad question that needs to be responded to is the progress made in transformation, including progress made in addressing issues of class, gender, and race. Comprehensive social transformation entails changing the material conditions of all South Africans.
We live in a country that is made up of 2 parts. The one part is developed. The social infrastructure is that which can be found in any capital in the world. The other part is underdeveloped. And so apartheid exists today in the form of backlogs in social infrastructure.
The inequalities in society are said to have led to the widening of the gap between rich and poor. While there is an emergence of the middle class which is predominantly black, many people are still left outside of the economy. This has become evident by the increase in service delivery protests.
Members of the ANC throughout the length and breadth of South Africa are crying out for firm leadership, for decisiveness in dealing with the issues of the organization. So this renewal document, I think, will assist the organization to move forward into the next 100 years.
Another key challenge is youth unemployment, with almost 3/4 of young people being unemployed, and a significant peak in youth unemployment is in the ages between 22 and 29 years. Identified causes of unemployment include the lack of experience and relevant education. There are calls to develop and preserve the South African arts, culture, and heritage. This is believed will promote social cohesion and nation building.
Nowhere in the world can you change this kind of inequality in one swoop. It's something which is going to take a long time, but that doesn't mean we can't make progress. And the more realistic we are, the more we concentrate on what we can do, the more likely we are to succeed.
With the pursuit of social transformation in the current context, the ANC believes it will rid our society of poverty and inequality for the current and future generations. Tsulufelo Mutibedi, SABC News.
Tsulufelo Mutibedi, our political correspondent, looking into the issue of social transformation. I want us to start kick off this discussion to talk about on the unemployment thing, something very bizarre. from where I sit, is happening, where you have the government saying, as an interim measure, yes, admittedly this is not a long-term solution, as an interim measure, they've even made money available on this wage subsidy thing. But you have an ally in Pasatu that says, not in our lifetime, it's never going to happen. But the government has taken a decision, the ANC government that is, and has even set money aside for this to happen. And it is not happening. And bizarrely, you have the opposition and a whole host of other people agitating for this thing to happen. And the government saying, we're waiting.
I think it's a sign of the paralysis that we've seen.
Isn't this yet another sign of the ANC refusing to show leadership?
Exactly.
Because if they were convinced of this thing, presumably that's exactly why they've made money available. But how they're making, why is it so difficult? Say, waiting for the NEDLEC process.
Because I think the whole, you're touching on the question of leadership here, or lack of leadership, or failure to provide leadership. I think the problem is partly this: we've gotten into this pattern now where the ANC is perpetually in kind of leadership, kind of election mode. From the one conference to the next, it's about who's going to become a leader. And so what happens? Whoever gets put in the position is reluctant to take bold steps, and we condemn to this situation where you put a person there and they're dilly-dallying, they spend time dilly-dallying, and yet the issue is this: it seems to me, in a country with such vast and stark inequalities, if you're a leader, then your job is to rise or fall by the decisions that you take. You bite the bullet, and we've seen here, sadly, this leadership post-Polokwane leadership has been dilly-dallying for a good 5 years now.
But it's interesting that maybe I'm reading too much into it, that the person who is now responsible, this thing has moved from treasury. Mm-hmm. The person who's actually responsible for this thing, for the implementation of this, is actually Ibrahim Patel.
Right.
Who is, as you know, is a unionist through and through, and now suddenly this thing has to go to NEDLEC. NEDLEC has to decide on this, and for as long as there's no consensus at NEDLEC, we're not even touching it. I find that curious, to say the least.
Bizarre, I would add, because there's a circulation of decisions. People do not want to make enemies. I completely agree with Sakela. It's continuous election mode. Just do not alienate anybody who could be mobilizing me against me in the next leadership election. And that has become self-destructive, actually.
Well, perhaps what we could add here is actually, we have an anomaly here. The alliance, I think, has served its purpose quite successfully and spectacularly at many occasions. But I think it does, and it has become, and let it be said, it has become a handicap in many respects. And I think this issue of the wage subsidy.
I actually want us to explore that. Further. Well, let's go inside for a bit of the mood, the music, as well as the sounds of the delegates here. Part of the 3,500 who are here to discuss the policies that the ANC believes we deserve, or South Africa deserves, certainly for the next 5 or so years.
Just arrived. Okay.
Well, the sights and sounds of the delegates as they prepare to get into or to get the opening session that's going to be addressed by the President Jacob Zuma underway. For now, though, we cross over to Tammy Dixon, who is standing by with the President of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, or another ally of the governing party. Tammy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Vuyo. Indeed, you can see inside here that the spirits are quite high and the mood is changing inside here. People are getting excited because the conference is about to begin. It's going to be a long week for the delegates. 4 days of discussing very, very essential discussion documents that the ANC has put together to ensure that it comes out with policies that will go on to change this country and ensure that many, many more people do benefit from the political transition of 1994. With me now is the president of COSATU, Mr. Stumo Dlamini. As we know that COSATU is in alliance with the ruling party in South Africa, so it's going to be very interesting to hear as to what are their interests insofar as this policy conference is concerned. Babu Dlamini, right, here is the policy conference of the ANC begins seeking to put South Africa in another paradigm shift. What is the interest of COSATU specifically in this policy conference?
Firstly, we want to say this is a very, very important policy conference of the African National Congress, where we all are present to drum up under what is now supposedly the theme, the second transition. What is the meaning of the second transition? Because the word comes across with an intention and a sign that people want to do things differently. So as COSATU, we have welcomed that. We are happy that this time has come. Our people need change. We're facing the triple challenge of unemployment, poverty, inequalities, and that this conference has got to go deeper into what are the fault lines created by the apartheid system, which will seek to propel us into a new paradigm where people of South Africa will taste and feel a practical change in their lives.
We do know that COSATU has been very much unhappy about some of the policies that relate to the workers, the labor in South Africa, particularly the issue of labor brokers. Is that something that you would push for in this policy conference to ensure that your desire to have labor brokers in South Africa as banned is in fact achieved?
We believe that this is the most opportune moment for the African National Congress to come out clear on this matter. If you miss this time around, you have missed an opportunity in South Africa where South Africans were hoping that this matter will be laid to rest once and for all through a total ban of labor brokers in our country. But also that this conference has got to indicate a clear departure from gear into a new mode of a macroeconomic strategy which seeks to deal with the appendages of the past of the apartheid system, the colonial spatial development that we experience in our country. We are looking forward to this conference.
There's a view that COSATU is not immune from all the problems that we find in the economic system in our country, particularly those that have to do with the difficulties of employing young people, and the issue now being the youth wage subsidy and so on. And to what extent do you think this policy conference is going to assist to ensure that young people are being employed and the issue of the youth wage subsidy is being addressed?
COSATU, historical, current and in future, remains the strongest voice which champions the issues that are affecting our youth in our country. Youth for full employment, youth for healthy lifestyles, youth for skills development and otherwise. We can never say there is justification from whoever we say who are causing the problems that are afflicting our youth today. We are the champions of the issues of our youth, including the issue of how we're standing opposed to the slavery forms of employing our youth through what is called the youth wage subsidy. We believe that there are many alternative forms of employment for our youth where they will, at the point of entry in the world of work, will enter with dignity, will be able to say we love our job because we are respected as the youth. It is COSATU. It is COSATU that continues to call for equal opportunities at the workplace, equal opportunities in society. No one will have any justification in saying COSATU is the cause of South Africa's problems. We are the solution.
Mr. Jamin, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you very much.
No, I've just arrived. Okay.
Well, the sights and sounds of the delegates as they prepare to get into or to get the opening session that's going to be addressed by the President Jacob Zuma underway. For now, though, we cross over to Tammy Dixon, who is standing by with the President of the Congress of South Africa. ANC Policy Conference, very much trending on Twitter. A lot of people saying all sorts of things, including conference starting in African time and so on. But also on our Facebook page, on our Sunday Live page, a lot of people saying, well, I hope the best of the conference would be driven by economic transformation, coming up with a plan to eradicate tender frauds, to do the best in getting up the education system. A lot of people expressing their wishes, hopes and aspirations. Others, of course, talking about our broadcast here, saying no, second transition is not a proxy for any leadership. Second transition is about people of South Africa who face deliberate issues, unemployment, poverty, inequality among the country's people. So some people differing with us there. Well, of course, so you can see the ANC Deputy President, Kgalema Motlanthe, has now also arrived together with the some of the leadership of the host province, Gauteng. Thandi Modisa, whom you saw earlier on, the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC. I want us to go back a bit to the policies, but before we go to an insert that sort of talks about some of that, gives the ANC's perspective on some of these policies. What for you would be, of those we haven't discussed, is there 2, 3 of the most, those you think that are going to be high up there on top of the agenda, apart from obviously the land and the second transition that we've spoken about already?
Yes, one which I think will be bubbling under is the legislature and governance document. Because that is about procedural policy. Sectoral is substantive, what you put into it. Procedural, and that is so much where the government problems are at the moment. How do you do it? How do you implement it? How do you address those mistakes that there are? How do you deal with local government? What do you do with the provinces? What electoral system do you have? A grand integrated election? Those all in that policy and governance document. So I think that's a big one. Legislative governance, that's a big one to watch.
Dr. Plum?
I think the broad kind of basket of issues around economic transformation are going to come up. You can see some of them being signaled already. The COSATU president signaling the issue of the wage subsidy or their rejection thereof, and of course the issue of labor broking. I think they're just going to push. You see, I think they'll push it through and put it on the agenda firmly. But there are other issues like the mining industry, whether you nationalize or what you do with the mining industry, the issue about state-owned enterprises, the issue about the involvement.
Separate document talking about
the involvement of the state in economic development and transformation and so on and so on. I think issues of the economy generally. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, if you're talking about the so-called second transition, which is about economic, you have to deal with
those issues. Okay, right. We'll go get into discussion of those. For an ANC perspective on the various policy documents that have been put on the table, here's an interview that Tommy Dixon conducted earlier on with the ANC's head of policy, Jeff Tamsang-Nakhabe.
To get a sense of all these documents and the real essence of this policy conference, we have a pleasure of being joined by the ANC head of policy, Mr. Jeff Radebe, who is right here with us. Jeff,
what is now supposedly the theme, the second transition? What is the meaning of the second
the ANC is, or where the country is at that particular point? Where does this policy conference find South Africa right now with regards to the policies that you want to put together?
Well, the policy conference that we're having now in 2012 takes place within the context of the ANC celebrating 100 years of selfless struggle for freedom in our country, and also 2 years before we celebrate 2 decades of our freedom. So that means that this is going to be a very historic conference in the sense that we're looking back at the achievements since 1994, where we've established institutions of political democracy, now going to the next level, the 20, 30 years, and also the horizon of the next 100 years. We need to ensure that the better life for the people of South Africa comes sooner rather than later. It is for that reason that the main emphasis in this policy conference, amongst others, is the issue of this major paradigm shift to social and economic transformation of South Africa, so that we can ensure that the triangle of poverty, inequality, and unemployment can be eradicated.
Now, the second transition, I think that's what you are referring to. We've had this statement a number of times that political freedom without economic emancipation is meaningless. Now, does the ANC think that maybe this paradigm shift, it happened quite little later? It should have happened earlier on, in terms of ensuring that the majority of the people of this country benefit from the political breakthrough of 1994. Is it the right time, or is it late, or is it early?
I think it is the right time, but we should also acknowledge that despite the fact that we have achieved monumental achievements in South Africa since 1994, the provision of water, sanitation, housing, bringing back the dignity of the African people in particular. But in a mere 18 years, we cannot be able to overcome 300 years of colonial rule and 40 years of apartheid. But it is the time, we feel as the ANC, that we need to ensure that we focus in terms of ensuring that the economic emancipation of our people happen. The history of Africa, I think, is a very good indicator that if we do not make this shift, it will not be appropriate.
Next year, South Africa will be celebrating 100 years of the notorious Land Act of 1913. But when you look at government programs in terms of transferring land to the hands of the black majority in this country, it's still very, very, very low in terms of percentages. If I'm not mistaken, it's about 8% of land that has been transferred, which is quite very disappointing, Minister. I'm sure you would agree with that. What is it that this conference is likely to do to ensure that land redistribution is speeded up?
Well, this is one of the key issues as we are moving forward in this policy conference. I think before I make a comment, I think we need to remember the words of the first Secretary General of the ANC, Solomon Blackare. When this Land Act was passed in 1913, he says one morning the native woke up not only landless, but a pariah in the land of his birth. So this historic injustice has to be corrected. If you look at the policy discussion document on this issue of land reform, we are dealing with this issue, more particularly dealing with the issue of willing buyer, willing seller issue, and coming up with mechanisms such as the land valuer to ensure that there must be equitable distribution of this land, and the issue of the value of the land must take into account all these historic injustices.
When you look at the document, the organizational renewal, it makes some very important admissions with regards to the cadre that is now in the ANC. Do you think that the ANC is in a position right now of being able to take this revolution to another level, to ensure that there's economic emancipation, to ensure that land is returned to black people and so on? Is it ready when you look at the caliber of cadres that it has right now?
That's why we're making a lot of introspection as the ANC, a lot of assessment of our cadres. It is for that reason that this document of organizational renewal calls upon members of the ANC to reposition this organization so that we can be able to take the ANC and the country into the next level. So the issue of the quality of our membership is of critical importance, because no matter how grand the policies may be, but if the people who are supposed to execute them are not ready, we will not be able to achieve our objectives. But I'm very confident, having been traveling the length and breadth of South Africa, that the political consciousness among
our job, because we are respected as the youth, it is COSA.
Members of the ANC will be up to the task of ensuring that we rebuild the organization and have the kind of cadres who will be able to execute these programs.
Lastly, and very briefly, Minister, and today, and as the conference begins, how is it going to unfold, particularly this morning? How is it going to unfold today?
This morning, we're going to be having a keynote address by the President to set the tone for this policy conference, and that will be followed by the Secretary General outlining the key issues on the organizational renewal, and then also going to be having a presentation on strategy and tactics, the second transition by Tony Yengeni, followed by Trevor Manuel on the National Planning Commission, and also a report on these SIMs, the research that was done on the issues of mining by Enoch Gotongwan, and the guidelines that I'm going to be making as the chair of the policy committee. After that, we'll be going to commissions where this robust, vibrant debate will be taking place, so that we can be able to ensure that the branches of the ANC must have their say on these policy discussion documents.
Mr. Hadebe, thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure.
All right, that's the head of the ANC policy, Mr. Jeff Hadebe, helping us to understand much better some of the documents that will be discussed as this policy conference of the ANC gets underway here in Galaga this morning. Fuyo, I'm sure you are ready that side.
Well, indeed, we are ready, but what we don't know for sure is whether the ANC is ready to kick off the formal proceedings. But the ANC president, Jacob Zuma, who's supposed to make the opening speech, to deliver the opening speech, is indeed there, ready and waiting to be given the go-ahead by the chairperson of the ANC, who is the chairperson of this particular session, Baleka Mbete, who will then have to give President Zuma that go-ahead to say, let's begin. For now, though, we are going to continue with the conversations that we've been having. You are indeed watching a live broadcast from Galaga Estates in Midrand, Johannesburg. Over the next 4 days, this is where the 3,500 or so members, delegates rather, of the various structures of the ANC are going to be deliberating. Right now, we go into proceedings.
May I please
conference
to bow our heads if we
very much trending on Twitter. A lot of people saying all sorts of things, including conference starting in African time and so.
Umudimo, ungukamata, ungunkulunkulu ngumvelanqange. We pray to you, Allah. We pray to Krishna. We pray to all those who respond in many ways to you as the maker and the creator of the universe and all that is in it. As we begin this conference, we adore you. We lift our hearts and we request that you give us your attention. we invoke your presence as we begin this conference. That, Lord, you lead us and guide us throughout all the deliberations which will be taking place in the next few days. We ask you not to forsake us. We ask you, God, not to leave us. Release the power of your Holy Spirit, that it may embrace us all and give us the clarity of mind and give us the ethical way of articulations. Give us the mutual respect and make us to be able to uphold each one's dignity as we go through this conference. We ask you, Lord,
of those you think that are going to be high up there on the second transition that we've spoken about already.
Yes, one which I think will be bubbling under is the legislature and government's document. Because that is about procedural policy. Sectoral is substantive, what you put into it. Procedural, and that is so much where the government problems are at the moment. How do you do it? How do you implement it? How do you address those mistakes that there are? How do you deal with local government? What do you do with the provinces? What electoral system do you have? A grand integrated election? Those things are all in that policy and governance document. So I think that's a big one. Legislative and governance, that's a big one to watch.
Dr. Plum?
I think the broad kind of basket of issues around economic transformation are going to come up. I mean, you can see some of them being signaled already. The COSATU president signaling the issue of the wage subsidy or their rejection thereof, and of course the issue of labor broking. I mean, I think they're just going to push. You see, I think they'll push it through and put it on the agenda firmly. But there are other issues like the mining industry, whether you nationalize or what you do with the mining.
All the social forces of this world and this country, let it be even now. I pray, Lord, especially for the unity of this organization. I curse in the name of you any temptation from whoever it is to divide this organization. We come before you, Lord, because you have traveled with us. Many lives have been lost. Many lives have been sacrificed. You can't, Lord, do this to us. You can't forsake us now. You can't leave us now. No, you cannot. I petition you, Lord, to walk before us as you walked before the nation of Israel out of Egypt. Walk before us. If during the day we happen to go astray, let us see the bowl of fire before us. If at night we happen to go astray, let us see you shining upon us as a great light. I give you this conference that you lead us, Lord. We will always be thankful for the 100 years you have given to us. It is our prayer and our hope that in the next 100 years you shall be with us. Make us to be your servants, in knowing that we've got a bigger responsibility beyond this room, and that is to ensure that your people in this country, they get the leadership of the betterment of their lives from the deliberations of this conference. Come, Holy Spirit, come and embrace us. We ask these things knowing that you shall grant to us. Tiko siyazi ukubunathi ibanati gengogo. In the name of Allah, in the name of Krishna, in the name of God, as we say Shanti, and Salam Alaikum, as we say Amen Makbenjalo.
Makube njalo mfundisi. Comrades, when we gathered in Mangaung to celebrate the 100 years of the ANC in January, and the president of this organization declared this year the year of unity in diversity, he had lit a flame, a centenary flame that has gone around this country. It has gone to 6 provinces. It is actually presently in its 6th province. And we would now like to welcome the centenary flame to come forward and be in our midst on the podium before we sing the national anthem and also listen to the president. And I'd like to ask that we all remain orderly in respect to the centenary flame. Comrades, can we rise to receive the flame?
It is for that reason that this document of organizational renewal calls upon members of the ANC to reposition this organization so that we can be able to take the ANC and the country into the next level. So the issue of the quality of our membership is of critical importance, because no matter how grand the policies may be, but if the people who are supposed to execute them are not ready, we will not be able to achieve our objectives. But I'm very confident, having been traveling the length and breadth of South Africa, that the political consciousness amongst members of the ANC will be up to the task of ensuring that we rebuild the organization and have the kind of cadres who will be able to execute these programs.
Lastly, and very briefly, Minister, and today, and as the conference begins, how is it going to unfold, particularly this morning? How is it going to unfold today?
This morning, we're going to be having a keynote address by the President to
Can we please be seated? Comrades, before I call upon the President to address us, we have a sad announcement to make that Comrade Godfrey Khosa passed on last night. He was a delegate from Limpopo. There's an announcement here that a brown wallet was lost at the Birchwood Pumulong Dining Hall today. So if anyone has come across this brown wallet, please give it to us. Comrade President, you addressed last night and you were talking to people who were having a presidential dinner with you to raise funds for the African National Congress. And you told us about a number of the presidents that you have already talked about, some you are still going to talk about. I simply wish to draw our attention to the fact that in this month of June, we are in Gauteng honoring the life of President Alfred Bathini. I've learned is the name. Bathini, not Bitini, as we have been saying. Alfred Bathini Kuma is the president we have been honoring in this month. I would now like to ask us to rise and observe a moment of silence for the comrade that has passed on and other comrades we have lost recently. Thank you very much. Can we be seated? Comrades delegates, comrades guests of the African National Congress, veterans, I now call upon the President of the African National Congress, Comrade Jacob Gedleyihlekisa Zuma, to address this National Policy Conference. Asinike umkhombandlela.
Is the power of your Holy Spirit, that He may embrace us all and give us the clarity of mind and give us the ethical way of articulations, give us the mutual respect, and make us to be able to uphold each one's dignity as we go through this conference. We ask you, Lord, to make us know that this conference is standing as a hope in this country. That as we rise on the last day, those policies that will be adopted by this mighty organization, they might have a positive impact in the lives of this nation. We lift our hearts to you. We ask you to guide us.
Amandla! Awethu! Matla! Geruna! All power! Thank you. National Chairperson, re a leboga haholo nako ena o re fang yona ka jele. Isizulu saka se.
At this time, at we stood and
the President, Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, ANC officials, members of the National Executive Committee of the ANC leadership of all structures, our alliance partners, and other representatives of the mass democratic movement, comrades, delegates.
Here is the ANC. Here is this organization of Dube. Here is this organization of Mahaban. Here is this organization of Lutuli. Here is this organization of Mandela. As it was the hope of all the social forces of this world and this country, let it be even now. I pray, Lord, especially for the unity of this organization. I curse in the name of you any temptation from whoever it is to divide this organization. We come before you, Lord, because you have traveled with us. Many lives have been lost. Many lives have been sacrificed. You can't, Lord, do this to us. You can't forsake us now. You can't leave us now. No, you cannot. I petition you, Lord, to walk before us. As you walked before the nation of Israel out of Egypt, walk before us. If during the day we happen to go astray, let us see the bowl of fire before us. If at night we happen to go astray, let us see you shining upon us as a great light. I give you this conference that you lead us, Lord. We will always be thankful for the 100 years you have given to us. It is our prayer and our hope that in the next 100 years you shall be with us. Make us to be your servants, in knowing that we've got a bigger responsibility beyond this room, and that is to ensure that your people in this country, they get the leadership of the betterment of their lives from the deliberations of this conference. Come, Holy Spirit, come and embrace us. We ask these things knowing that you shall grant to us. Tiko siyazi ukubunathi ibanati ke ngoku. In the name of Allah, in the name of Krishna, in the name of God, as we say Shanti, and Salam Alaikum, as we say Amen, Makbenjalo.
Makubenjalo mfundisi. Comrades, when we gathered in Mangaung to celebrate the 100 years of the ANC in January, and the president of this organization declared this year the year of unity in diversity, he had lit a flame, a centenary flame that has gone around this country. It has gone to 6 provinces, It is actually presently in its 6th province. And we would now like to welcome the Centenary Flame to come forward and be in our midst on the podium before we sing the national anthem and also listen to the President. And I'd like to ask that we all remain orderly in respect to the Centenary Flame. Comrades, can we rise to receive the flame?
Great deal of interest in ANC policy making. We look forward to fruitful, open, and engaging debates at this conference, as well on all issues that are contained in the conference documents. We pride ourselves in this movement on the culture of internal democracy and engagement. Comrades, this conference, which takes place during the centenary of our movement, provides an opportunity to reflect on the character of the organization. In discussing the critical topic of organizational renewal, we reaffirm the character of the ANC as a disciplined force of the left with a bias towards the poor and the working class. The ANC has been the voice of the poor and the marginalized, and a parliament of the people since its inception in 1912. As articulated by the Polokwane Conference, the movement evolved over the years into a force for mass mobilization, a glue that held our people together, and a trusted leader of the broadest range of social forces that share the vision of a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. To maintain this character, the ANC should be able to cleanse itself of alien tendencies which range from wanton ill-discipline to those linked to incumbents. These tendencies include social distance, patronage, careerism, corruption and abuse of power, ineffective management of interface between the movement and the state, a flawed approach of membership recruitment, and a decline in ideological depth amongst cadres. In addition, the National General Council in Durban in 2010, in particular, strongly pronounced on the need to promote and enforce discipline within the ANC, regardless of who the perpetrators were. The ANC has taken action and will continue to take action against anyone who crosses the line. We all have a responsibility to maintain the character of the organization, restore its core values, and protect its dignity and integrity. To further entrench the culture of discipline and in preparation for Mangaung, the policy conference must underscore the movement's core values of unity, selflessness, sacrifice, collective leadership, humility, honesty, discipline, hard work, internal debates, constructive criticism, and self-criticism, and mutual respect. Towards this end, conference must seriously discuss the proposal that the 53rd National Conference in Mangaung must adopt a decade-long program of organizational renewal running from 2012 to 2022. This program must consolidate and expand the character and values of the ANC as a revolutionary people's movement. The renewal must include the revitalization of the structures of the movement and to build stronger, united, cohesive, and effective ANC branches. The ANC should also, as part of the renewal, fast-track the political development of cadres.
A brown wallet was lost at the Birchwood Pumulong Dining Hall today. So if anyone has come across this brown wallet, please give it to us. Comrade President, you addressed last night and you were talking to people who were having a presidential dinner with you to raise funds for the African National Congress. And you told us about a number of the presidents that you have already talked about, some you are still going to talk about. I simply wish to draw our attention to the fact that in this month of June, we are in Gauteng honoring the life of President Alfred Batini, I've learned is the name. Batini, not Bitini, as we have been saying.
Youth League in particular, so that it can continue fulfilling its historical task of being the incubator and preparatory school for the future ANC leadership. In its wisdom, the ANC also established a Veterans League 2 years ago. It is expected of the ANC Veterans League to be a custodian of the culture, values, and traditions of the organization, less part of the controversy. The Veterans League, and the Veterans League must appreciate and understand its role. And I'm happy I see them here. You must understand your role in the organization. It is to help the organization, not to deepen what may be a controversial situation. Hey, I've got a right because I'm half you and half modern. I'm between old and young. I can gamble. Comrades, all the victories we have scored in this revolution have been with the support of our alliance partners. We've always been together. Therefore, the ANC renewal program must take into account the need to deepen the relationship between the South African Communist Party and COSATU. Comrades, the ANC is also strengthened by the support of the South African National Civics Organization and Umkhonto weSizwe Military Veterans Association, cadres who sacrificed all and took up arms in the defense of our country, its people, and its future. The ANC has succeeded over the past decades due to its capacity to mobilize other sectors such as business, the faith-based community, non-governmental organizations, community organizations, students, traditional leaders, the international community, and the intelligentsia, amongst others. We should continue to mobilize society behind building a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. Comrades, since 1969, the ANC produces a strategy and tactics document as a guide and a theoretical foundation for our national democratic revolution. In Strategy and Tactics 2012, we request conference to discuss in particular the notion of a second transition to economic and social emancipation. We move from the premise that in only 2 years we will conclude the second decade of freedom and have a start asking difficult questions about the present and the future. The time has come to ask those questions in 2 decades, because any revolution that I've seen, that I've known, in 2 decades gets to a point where it must either go straight or take a turn. The first 18 years have been characterized as the first transition of primarily a political nature given the priorities and the conditions at the time of the transition from apartheid and colonial oppression to a free and democratic society. Having scored many achievements during the first 18 years, there is also widespread consensus that we have been unable to reach the goal of a truly prosperous, inclusive, non-racial and non-sexist society. The triple challenge of poverty, inequality and unemployment persists, affecting Africans, women and the youth in particular. We therefore calling for a dramatic shift or giant leap to economic and social transformation so that we can be able to deal decisively with the triple challenge: poverty, inequality, and unemployment. These are three challenges that face us with all the successes we've made since 1994. Amongst underlying causes of the slow pace towards economic freedom is the fact that ahead of 1994 breakthrough, we went through a negotiations process at CODESA, which produced a negotiated settlement. We had to make certain compromises in the national interest, and these were absolutely necessary to be made. For an example, we had to be cautious about restructuring the economy in order to maintain economic stability and confidence at the time. Thus, the economic power relations of the apartheid era have in the main remained intact. The ownership of the economy is still primarily in the hands of white males, as it has always been. And what exactly did we achieve during the first transition of the first 18 years of freedom? On the 27th of April 1994, South Africans voted together for the first time in national general election and ushered in an era of freedom, democracy, human rights, and justice for all. Building on its rich human rights tradition, the ANC led the process of drafting a new constitution for the country. The constitution reflects the principles contained in the ANC Bill of Rights of 1923, with a bias towards the African Claims document of 1943 and the Freedom Charter of 1955. The South African Constitution was adopted on the 8th May, the voice of the poor and the marginalized, and a parliament of the people since its inception in 1912. As articulated, a major victory for the ANC and for our country. Friends, the movement evolved over the years into a force for mass mobilization, a glue that held our people together, and a trusted leader of the broadest range of social forces that share the vision of a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. To maintain this character, the ANC should be able to cleanse itself of alien tendencies which range from wanton ill-discipline to those linked to incumbents. These tendencies include social distance, patronage, careerism, corruption and abuse of power, ineffective management of interface between the movement and the state, a flown approach of membership recruitment, and a decline in ideological depth amongst cadres. In addition, the National General Council in Durban in 2010, in particular, strongly pronounced on the need to promote and enforce discipline within the ANC, regardless of who the perpetrators were. The ANC has taken action and will continue to take action against anyone who crosses the line. We all have a responsibility to maintain the character of the organization, restore its core values, and protect its dignity and integrity. To further entrench the culture of discipline and in preparation for Mangaung, the policy conference must underscore the movement's core values of unity, selflessness, sacrifice, collective leadership, humility, honesty, discipline, hard work, internal debates, constructive criticism, and self-criticism, and mutual respect. Towards this end, conference must seriously discuss the process of learning. More than 8 million children at primary and secondary schools benefit from school feeding schemes and no-fee policies. Student loans are being converted into bursaries for qualifying final year students, while those in further education and training colleges who qualify for financial aid are now exempted from paying fees. There has been a stabilization in the number of people living with HIV after rising since 1990s. Nationally, there has been a remarkable reduction in mother-to-child transmission HIV from about 8% in 2008 to 3.5% in 2011. thus protecting over 30,000 babies from infection and poor health. Another major achievement is that as at the middle of last year, 15.1 million people had been tested for HIV voluntarily, and 1.7 million were initiated on antiretroviral treatment. We appear to be on track to meet the target of 2.5 million on treatment by 2014. On peace and stability, crime statistics show a decrease in most crimes, including armed robberies, housebreaking, and contact crimes. Through the implementation of a major infrastructure program over the years, the ANC government helped to create jobs and protected our communities from the worst effects of the global economic crisis. South Africa made Africa proud through successfully hosting major events such as the 2010 FIFA Soccer World Cup and the United Nations COP17 Climate Change Conference, to name just two, which happened very recently. Internationally, South Africa was reintegrated into the international community of nations and has been invited to join various international forums such as the G20, BRICS, being a member of the Security Council and others, given its status and the manner in which the ANC is regarded in the world. Comrades, we are definitely proud of the achievements of the first 18 years of freedom. Very few countries have achieved so much in just under 2 decades. We had emerged from 3 centuries of institutionalized and systematic oppression and ill treatment of black people, described by Madiba as a human disaster that went on for too long in his statement from the dock when he was being charged. Noting these achievements, the time has come to do something more drastic to accelerate change towards economic transformation and freedom. Because, as you'll appreciate, much as we have achieved this, but we are saying poverty, inequality, and unemployment is the biggest challenge, with all the successes that we've made. And I'm explaining this because it must not look like when we talk about the second transition, we don't know what has happened. We've been the participants of these successes. And it is important to note that as you sit here, you know, there are occasionally protests of people saying services who are feeling the heavy burden of these 3 challenges. And we can't sit and say it's fine. One day, perhaps when God loves it, it will come right. We are in government, we have to do something about it. in proposing a radical shift towards economic and social transformation strategy and tactics 2012 implores us to approach the upcoming Mangaung Conference in a similar fashion as other landmark conferences. These include the Founding Conference of 1912, the 1949 Conference, which adopted the Militant Program of Action, the 1969 Morogoro Conference, and perhaps also the Kabwe Conference of 1985. The level of frustration in some communities is high, and understandably so. While many have received basic services, many more are still waiting for electricity, water, sanitation, proper roads, trains that run on time all the time, decent housing, as well as clinics that have medical staff and medicines in certain areas. From time to time, people resort to protests to voice their anger, which sometimes turn violent. We must caution that while frustrations at erratic delivery are understandable, the destruction of property and resorting to violence will never be tolerated. Such lawlessness will be dealt with by law enforcement agencies, while on the political side, we work to resolve the complaints of our communities. We are assisted in our work by the National Planning Commission with regards to projections and planning for the future. Last year, the NPC released a diagnostic document stating that the elimination of poverty and inequality are the objectives of a long-term plan. In November last year, the Commission produced a draft national development plan covering 13 areas, including job creation, education, health, rural development, citizen safety, economic infrastructure, social protection, and South Africa's place in the region and the world. What solutions will be brought by the second transition? To improve government performance, we must develop an effective democratic developmental state. The state has a number of instruments that it can use to improve and drive transformation. These include the national budget, state-owned enterprises, and the macroeconomic framework, including policy on monetary, fiscal, labor, industrial policy, and trade matters. The ANC must also pay attention to improving the capacity of the public service at professional, technical, and numerical levels. The quality of cadres and their understanding of the mission of the ANC must be taken seriously. On the economy, we need to go back to the basics and take the difficult decisions that we could not take in 1994 with regards to the economy. As we stated in Polokwane, our most effective weapon in the campaign against poverty is the creation of decent work, and creating work requires faster economic growth. To achieve this, we must create a thriving mixed economy where the state, private capital, cooperative and other forms of social ownership complement each other in an integrated way to eliminate poverty and foster shared economic growth. To achieve inclusive and labor-absorbing growth, the state must play an active role in the economy, driving development, especially in neglected areas. To change the structure, the ANC must democratize and de-racialize the ownership and control of the economy by empowering Africans in particular and blacks in general, and the working class in particular, to play a leading role. Despite the liberation of the economy, the structure of the apartheid economy has remained largely intact and has not allowed the higher or inclusive growth. Our broad-based black economic empowerment strategy and employment equity policies have been successful but have not yielded sufficient results. Our 2009 election manifesto put South Africa's black middle class at 2.6 million in 2007 due to empowerment policies, which is impressive. However, the wealth is largely obtained through holding shares. Spread consensus that we have been unable to reach the goal of a truly prosperous, inclusive, non-racial and non-sexist society. The triple challenge of poverty, inequality and unemployment persists, affecting Africans, women. When Smith finishes, he says, well, yoga comrades, that's it. Our economic transformation efforts should focus on achieving a rising per capita income, full employment, and our targets must demonstrate real and visible progress in reducing wealth and income inequalities. Economic transformation must also entail promoting regional development in Southern Africa, thereby fostering the progressive integration of the region. The ANC is proposing these policy shifts during a difficult period when growth is slowing down again worldwide due to the Eurozone crisis. Many economic targets will be difficult to attain. However, while the developed world is in trouble, the rise of the South and other emerging economies provides opportunities. These include China, India, Brazil, Russia, with whom South Africa has struck strategic partnerships in BRICS and IPSA. In addition, Africa is showing promising signs of growth and is expected to grow by more than 5% over the next few years. This is a cause for optimism. At a practical and short-term level, there is a lot that we can do and that we are already doing to boost inclusive economic growth and promote youth employment. Firstly, our education and training system should be the cornerstone of all efforts to radically transform South Africa and build a truly non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, united and prosperous society, as stated in our January 8th statement. Therefore, we must improve youth access to higher education institutions and internships. The state must improve its public employment programs, such as the community work and infrastructure programs. The ANC government launched the new growth path in 2010, through which we seek to create jobs in 6 priorities. These are infrastructure development, agriculture, mining and beneficiation, manufacturing, the green economy, and tourism. The infrastructure program has since been elevated to a presidential program, being coordinated in all 3 spheres of government under the auspices of the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission. It provides several opportunities for job creation in the improvement of the road networks, water, rail, ports, bridges, schools, hospitals, or the refurbishments of airports and mining infrastructure. Proposals have also been tabled to use our state-owned enterprises and development finance institutions as instruments of economic transformation and skills development, especially for the youth. To date, 9,000 young people being trained by state-owned enterprises to become engineers, technicians, and artisans. The economic cluster should also coordinate the absorption of graduates with labor, business, and the community sector at NETLEC. Already, the response of business, labor, and the community sector through NETLEC is encouraging, given the agreements that were signed last year. The Skills Accord committed partners to enroll at least 30,000 artisan trainees over the next 12 months in training programs. The Green Economy Accord committed government and business to ensure that 80% of new employees in the manufacturing and installation of solar water heating systems and in public works programs to green the economy should be the youth. The Basic Education Accord commits the partners to work together to improve learning and teaching. The Local Procurement Accord committed partners to increase local procurement to promote job creation. The ANC needs to continue mobilizing all sectors to take forward these partnerships. Conference must discuss the potential of the small business sector, and how the state, a fully functional government system, the people govern through choosing a government of their choice every 5 years through national general elections. We have a parliament that is vibrant and holds the executive accountable. We have an independent judiciary which is a final arbiter in all disputes in our society. To complement job creation measures, especially for young people actively seeking employment, we propose a job seeker grant for discussion, which is linked to compulsory skills development programs. This must be complemented by development finance institutions, state-owned enterprises, the National Youth Development Agency, and the banking sector. The ANC Youth League has also proposed that we look at formal programs of sending young people to other countries for training and exposure. This is the ANC Youth League as a contribution to our conference documents. This can be looked at in the context of relations with other countries. Comrades, on the question of mineral resources, we must go deeper than nationalize or not nationalize. The kind of debate, as the discussion document indicates. The Freedom Charter states that the people shall share in the country's wealth. In this regard, let us clarify that the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act affirms mineral wealth as a national asset, a common heritage that belongs to all in South Africa, and pronounces the state as the custodian thereof. Therefore, the state exercises sovereignty over the entire mineral and petroleum resources within the Republic. This is what is the situation. In the same vein, Article 2.1 of the United Nations Charter of Economic Rights and Duties of States grants states full permanent sovereignty, including possession and disposal over all their natural resources. We welcome the report of the state involvement in the mining sector, and we thank the research team for the hard work that they've done. Conference must deliberate on how the state can obtain an equitable share from the mineral resources and how communities can benefit more from this national resource. Next year, we mark the centenary of the 1913 Natives Land Act, a painful process in the history of our country. That gross historical injustice was best described by Sol Plaatje when he said, and I quote, "Awaking on Friday morning, June 20, 1913, the South African native found himself not actually a slave. Another major achievement is that as at the middle of last year, but a pariah in the land of his birth, unquote. The Constitution of the Republic enjoins the state to take legislative and other measures to enable citizens to gain land rights. Our position is that the current willing buyer, willing seller model must be reviewed. It tends to distort the land market through inflating the prices of land earmarked for restitutions. It makes land reform expensive and delays land restitution to the poor. Broad proposals have been placed before conference to enable faster movement on this matter within the confines of the Constitution and the law. With regards to social transformation, in the context of the second transition, conference must also look at broadening the social wage, electricity, education, housing, social security, water and electricity, to name a few. Child protection, early childhood development should also receive our attention. Let us note as well that today, 26 June, in the International Day, is an international day against substance abuse. We must take seriously the discussions about how to eradicate drugs and substance abuse in our society. With regards to health, conference must reflect on the implementation of Polokwane resolutions to increase life expectancy, decrease maternal and child mortality, combat HIV and AIDS, and decrease the burden of disease from tuberculosis. We must ensure health system effectiveness and prepare for the introduction of the National Health Insurance. Other social interventions include developing and preserving our arts, culture, sports, heritage, and language to promote social cohesion and nation building. The promotion of African languages in our schools, universities, and in public will be a powerful healing and reconciliatory gesture. Comrades, since the formation of the ANC Women's League in 1943, the ANC has integrated the struggle for liberation with the struggle for the emancipation of women. The progress we have made in our country so far with regards to gender equality is due to the hard work of the ANC Women's League in ensuring the adoption of a transformative policies with regards to gender. Conference must deliberate on the Gender Equality Bill, which advocates the 50-50 parity in the public and private sector. Other priority areas are to mainstream gender equity measures across the whole of government, economic empowerment, job creation, and sustainable livelihoods for women, rural women's development, and women's empowerment through skills development. On peace and stability, delegates must engage on the fight against crime and corruption, the improvement of our national identity system by Home Affairs, and the functioning of the courts, amongst others. This conference and Mangaung must prioritize the promotion of integrity in leadership and accelerate the fight against corruption. Our legislation and governance proposals looked at how we can strengthen provinces and local government. The two are closer to the people, and people in the main judge the ANC based on the performance of the two spheres, the provincial and the local. On science and technology, the proposal is to increase our gross expenditure on research and development as a percentage of GDP to make the country more competitive so that we can move rapidly into a knowledge economy and information society. We welcome the creation of the Young Academy of Sciences of South Africa, especially in light of our magnificent victory in winning rights to develop a square-kilometer array telescope with Australia. That is another important achievement we've made. The discussion document on communication proposes that a single national information and communications technology policy framework be developed. South Africa is in the process of migrating from analog to digital transmission, and we need to ensure that ICT in our country becomes an enabler. It should be a utility like water and electricity. In addition, every home should be able to have access to the electronic media. We must also endeavor to spread the base of operation of the entire spectrum that becomes available so that smaller businesses in the sector benefit. Comrades, on international relations, we continue to place Africa first, especially the promotion of African unity and regional economic integration. We believe strongly that Africa must determine its own destiny and deal with its matters without outside interference. We must discuss the post-conflict reconstruction and development, peacekeeping operations, and mediation that we are engaged in. We continue to derive value from participation in forums such as BRICS, G20, India, Brazil, South Africa, IPSA, and also in the participation in the United Nations and other multilateral institutions, conference must look at how to strengthen global governance, South-South cooperation, and South-South relations, parliamentary diplomacy, and economic diplomacy. The ANC is an anti-imperialist organization, and as such, we continue to support the struggles of other organizations that are still fighting for self-determination. On the Palestinian-Israeli question, our position is that a credible, inclusive dialogue must take place on the basis of a two-state framework and to encourage unity amongst Palestinians. On the freedom of the people of the Western Sahara, ANC supports the negotiated settlement with the government of the Kingdom of Morocco under the auspices of the United Nations. We continue to pledge our solidarity with the government and the people of Cuba, and we call for an immediate end to the U.S. embargo on Cuba and support the release of the Cuban Five. We'll continue to promote party-to-party relations, especially in Africa. In this regard, we extend good wishes to Frelimo in Mozambique, which celebrated its 50th anniversary over the weekend. Comrades and friends, the pursuit of national democratic revolution requires that we be constantly engaged in the ideological struggles, the battle of ideas. The ANC must lead debates in society and not only be a subject to be debated by others on their own terms. How do we lead this terrain of struggle? We must also reflect on the perceptions about the organization. Does the ANC meet people's expectations and perform as the people want? We must ask ourselves these questions. How do we build and strengthen trust and continuously renew the connection between the people and their government? We said in January 8th statement that we would modernize the ANC. How ready are we to do this by being open to new ideas? The policy conference should enable us to ponder all these questions. Comrades, we have outlined some of the proposals that are being put forward to this conference, including the renewal of the organization and the deepening of social and economic transformation through embarking on a second transition. Let us go to the commissions with open minds and engage in the discussions with a view to strengthen and relate to its area. Should we have a branch of 3,000 members? How does it meet? How does it function? can it meet in reality? Unless when it means we have a rally. That's not a branch, it's a rally. I think we've got to discuss this issue as we discussed the lifespan of a branch which we started at Stellenbosch and finally finalized it afterwards. Because it was 1 year and we had a problem that as soon as people were elected, the battle who leads the branch next 12 months started, and there was no work done to develop a branch. And I think the question of the size, the manner in which the branch should function, is a critical matter. What are the tasks of the branch? We can't take it for granted that we've got branches and the branches must just go on. There must be time limits when the branch reports on what. What are the tasks? And I hope the commission will go into these matters. Very important as part of the renewal of our organization. We are not doing this for ourselves as ANC members, all of this. We are doing it for the country as a whole. We are a leader in this country. We are a leader of society, and that's how we should understand it. That understanding must inform our behavior, the manner in which we carry ourselves as members of the ANC in the eyes of the country. Very important. You need to make people feel confident, to have hope by just looking at how the ANC carries itself and its individual members. Let us remember as well that all commissions are important and equal. Let us not find more commissions populated more than others because they discuss wonderful topics. Every topic is equally important to others. As we discuss our policy proposals and prepare for the national conference in December, we should not lose sight of the fact that maintaining the unity of the ANC remains paramount. Unity is the rock upon which the ANC was founded, says Madiba. Let us draw lessons from President Oliver Tambo when he informed the 1991 conference on how they kept the ANC together in exile under harsh conditions. He said, and I quote, "We did not tear ourselves apart because of lack of progress at times. We were always ready to accept our mistakes and to correct them. Above all, we always managed to defend the unity of the ANC and the unity of our people in general." Unquote. Let the festival of ideas flourish. I wish delegates a successful conference indeed. Amandla! Awethu! Matla! Gerona! No magubi! No magubi,
ANC President Jacob Zuma giving the keynote address there in Nika Umkombandela. Well, very briefly, overall, what did you make of the speech?
Overall, I would love to see more of a sense of celebration in the speech. This is the centenary year, a pivotal Congress that has a set road ahead. It was, on the one hand, not celebratory enough for me. ANC needs to capture this moment to help carry it forward. There were brief moments of honesty when he came on towards the end especially and talked about the branches and talked how pivotal unity is, even if those were very cursory references, and said these things are not fine if people are protesting, things are not fine, he'll look at us and see how ANC carries itself. More of that. The rest was very much a list of to-do, must do this and must do that without sufficient detail, except where he spoke to the private sector what they must do for job creation.
Okay. Dr. Buhlungu, overall?
Overall, an interesting speech. I think a lot of the things that he mentioned are things that we know already, the achievements, how many houses built and how many clinics and so on and so forth. That's that. I found that okay, it's okay. But I found the president least convincing when he was talking about the second transition, particularly because this conference is supposed to kind of launch the organization into a new phase of operation, into a new phase of policy kind of approaches and so on. And I wasn't too happy there.
Well, unfortunately, we took a great deal of time was talking about what was happening before he actually spoke. The conference started very late. Well, unfortunately, that's all we had time for. We've come to the end of this special broadcast for today. Until we meet again, thank you very much for watching. From me, Vuyo Mvoko, and the rest of the crew, have a good day.
Okay.